Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. What a fun way to start the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you very much. Beautiful day in Trinidad and Tobago. The sun is shining bright. I mean, this is the first time in perhaps over a week, that the weather is just like this. And what's to add to this perfection in our weather is the mere fact that traffic is absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, alongside my co-host, alongside me this morning is my co-host and colleague, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Yes, Keaton, alongside your co-host would be you.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But, you know, everybody wants to be me, but it can't be me. You know the story. This morning, beautiful morning, traffic on my end actually was surprisingly light for once, at least as compared to yesterday. But I don't know, it's still, I feel as though, or I feel similarly to where we were maybe a couple months ago, half a year ago, where it seems as though the government can't really get its feet under it and is trying hard to appear as though they are in control when, to me, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe with regards to the overall situation of running the country, they are in about as much control as any government usually is. And, you know, you could insert whatever bad comment about government performance throughout the years that you want to that statement. But I do find that it's very awkward when there's just so much bad press or reasons to criticize the government, and it's almost as though they kind of forgotten, hey, the opposition doesn't really do anything, doesn't set policy. So we don't really have much to criticize them on. You, the government, are the only game in town. You, the government, are the only ones having to stick your neck out there and make decisions. That's the price you pay with responsibility and authority. And I mean, I find myself this morning agreeing with Fitzgerald Hines, of all people. That's to tell you, Keaton, how ironic and bad the general's current events are.
Okay, so I assume you're agreeing with Fitzgerald Hines as it relates to his chastising of Tutu's actions?
Well, the thing is, I have already gone on record of making similar criticism, so I can't disagree with it just because Hines says it. And I do believe that there is a link between education and our education failings and our both criminal issue or rising crime rate as well as our economic problems. So for Hines to weigh in on an opinion on it, I think is not necessarily unwarranted. He has the right because the education has to be part of the solution with regards to that whole situation. But then also now, I'm besides myself because the Attorney General, or the former Attorney General, I thought the days of me criticizing the former Attorney General for his work as Attorney General would be over. And apparently it's not. The Minister of Local Government has still managed to find himself in the hot seat from his days as Attorney General. And this whole situation, Keaton, just overall, there's not even any good because there's still criticisms coming now from the independent senators even over the budget. Maybe not harsh criticism, but they're not necessarily happy with it either. So there's no good news for the government right now. And this situation with the case being discontinued, some media houses use the term collapsed.
No, I wouldn't say the case collapsed. I think I wouldn't use that term at all. I think there is good news.
Because it could continue.
I think there is good news for the government, and what that good news is the fact that after all the turbulence, it's good news for the government, not necessarily for the nation, that they're still in office. Prime Minister that's good news for the government. The amount of pressure that I'm not, again, read my words and listen to what I'm saying. It is good news for the government, not necessarily for the nation, because the government has faltered many a times during this term. This term,
yes.
This term, I mean...
That's the irony. This is the newer term that's only 2 years old.
2.5 years into their, or just under 2 years. Just over 2 years into their second term as a sitting government. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has sought fit to keep Colm Imbert as the Minister of Finance. Yet he thought removing Paris Arawi as the Attorney General and putting him in local government, bringing in a new Attorney General, there was controversy surrounding his appointment as Attorney General as well. You know, this government is still there, and good for them, you know, and to them, regardless of whatever controversies may arise, they will always remain there. It's the same thing with Fitzgerald Hines. Okay, he made a statement that I agree with him to the extent that, yes, tutors' actions are questionable and debatable many a times. However, I also believe that if we are to link education to crime, if we are to link crime to almost every single thing, you know, as Louis Leasing was pointing out yesterday, when a budget is created in Trinidad and Tobago, we're under the impression that national security is the only allocation that deals with crime in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Yeah. And that was a very good point, by the way. That was a good point, yes. Right? But think about it. Fitzgerald Hines also has a lot to do, and a lot that he says he has been doing, yet people have not been feeling or experiencing. Let's take a look at education, for example, and infrastructure. Let's take a look at school buildings. Look at what's happening with St. George's College right now in Barataria. The Ministry of Education issued a release stating that the school suffered from severe roof damage due to the heavy rains experienced last week and inclement weather. That's utter rubbish. You know, maintenance would, you know, inclement weather can cause anything to happen. I'm not stating that it is impossible. I'm just thinking that if you had maintenance and if you had building checks being carried out, it's highly improbable that such would happen. So all across, you're right. There isn't much good news for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago except the fact that we're alive today. But there is good news for the government, and that is they're still in power. I mean, if this is what happens without hurricane-level weather, imagine what would have happened with hurricane-level weather. Now, focusing on the situation with Faris Aurora, yesterday he had a press conference to defend his position. I know later on we will have a guest to speak on the overall situation, but I did cut a clip that I wanted you, because he makes certain, well, some of his initial defense. We can't obviously show the entire press conference, but let's hear what the former Attorney General had to say about one of his decisions, or perhaps it wasn't his decision, when he was Attorney General.
The Director of Public Prosecutions, who has a constitutional role under Section 90 of the Constitution to institute charges, take over charges, and also to drop charges, acting in his sole discretion, took the step to charge Mr. Ram Logan and Mr. Ramdeen after he had received evidence coming from Mr. Vincent Nelson and a number of other persons. I would like to state very plainly that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa's attempt is one to bait the government, and in particular me, to overspeak on a matter, to fall into a trap of undue publicity where attorneys can argue that their clients will not have a fair trial because there's too much information in the public domain. Therefore, I need to be careful in my regard for the law, to allow the DPP his distance, and to be mindful as a former Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs in this country that the law always speaks and that the Privy Council decision must be observed. Mr. Nelson's notarized statement specifically said that Mr. Ram Logan and Mr. Ramdeen were the beneficiaries of corruption, that he paid bribes to Mr. Ram Logan via Mr. Ramdeen in a fictitious arrangement. He gave full particulars, he provided the evidence, he provided the bank statements, he provided the wire transfer information. Senior counsel Mr. Mendez specifically settled a written indemnity agreement that he advised that the state enter into, and under that written indemnity agreement, the specific context was that the notarized statement and the evidence of wrongdoing will be given to the Director of Public Prosecutions and to the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau. In that indemnity statement as well, the state undertook, on the advice of senior counsel, that no civil proceedings would be commenced for the recovery of legal fees that were paid to Mr. Nelson. and also that there would be a certain amount of indemnity if there was a breach of the indemnity in giving that statement to persons who ought not to have that statement. That was specifically subject to the Attorney General's obligations in law and under statute. So it was a very qualified, careful indemnity settled by Mr. Mendez, senior counsel. After that, I can tell you that Mr. Nelson then participated on at least 10 occasions in confirming his guilt in the matter and in confirming his position in relation to the fact, as he alleges, that Mr. Ram Logan and Mr. Ramdeen were guilty of bribery and other matters in stealing taxpayers' money by way of kickback of legal fees.
Well, Keaton, so the AG is essentially making two claims there at that part of the press conference. One which has been reported at least in one of the local newspapers. I took advice. I didn't make the deal. It was senior counsel that made the deal. And the DPP, he independently decided to move ahead with the prosecution. I did not give instructions from on high, which is not necessarily, I believe, what people in other quarters think. Now, he is the AG. He was technically there. He was the AG. He was part of the process. But now it seems as though there are those who would say, well, no. From what we understand, perhaps from reading the records, you were central to this decision of this indemnity agreement.
What is interesting to me is that the Attorney General does not necessarily answer any of the questions that were being posed by the opposition leader. However, he says his justification is that the opposition leader is trying to bait the government and himself as the former Attorney General into feeding information which will essentially pervert the court of justice. However, it's quite ironic that he would say that and then go on to state that Mr. Nelson admitted on 10 occasions that he was guilty, and he also spoke about Gerald Ramdeen and Anna Ram-Logan essentially doing things that were illegal or conducting themselves in their capacities as the former Attorney General and a former government senator in inappropriate, illegal ways. So it's interesting how he contradicts himself in that sense, which he shouldn't do. Also, I'm curious, though an indemnity agreement, and hopefully we will get more clarification in a moment when we're joined by our guest, is supposed to be something that is recognized by the law. Allegedly, the Director of Public Prosecutions advised that it was improper, yet the Attorney General sought to go ahead with it.
Right.
So
this is counter to what Faris Awari said in his press conference
precisely.
yesterday.
So on one hand, you're claiming that you acted on advice, which again, nothing is wrong with you acting on advice. The Office of the Attorney General, every Attorney General seeks advice.
Might I just point out that just about every controversial situation he found himself in as Attorney General, eventually the defense was he was acting on advice.
Right. Yes, and that's a fair point. But attorneys act on advice as well. There are senior attorneys who would advise junior attorneys, and clearly Faris Awari, I don't know, like it's not abnormal to seek advice, but in his capacity as Attorney General, he was very poor and pathetic to say the least. However, it's like you are seeking advice at your convenience because you're justifying it by saying this was from Douglas Mendez and Gilbert Peterson, but then you didn't even take allegedly the advice of the DPP, and that is this is improper. So, you know, you're also alluding to the probability that these charges may arise in the future. Again, to me, it just seems as though the Attorney General, without realizing it because he has the gift of the gab, so much so that he might confuse himself sometimes, is digging himself in a deeper hole.
So I want to just focus a little bit on the statement that the opposition leader is trying to bait him. And I think, first of all, at least in that part of the press conference, he did not necessarily give much about what his role was, right? What he did say, or what little he said there, and you know, there was more to the press conference, was that he divested himself of the he was not the one central to those decisions made, which are some of the key decisions in this whole situation. Who made this deal? Who said, yes, we could go and prosecute this case based on this deal? I always say that the opposition is baiting the government on the political platform, for the bubble, for the political back and forth, right? To have that argument, to get Keith Rowley riled up, and to say all of the things that political analysts and commentators don't like when he says, when he goes off the rails, which he has done somewhat less of compared to his first term, or at least not in as an extreme bad of a way as a couple of interesting examples in his first term, but he has still done, as well as has other colleagues of his. Because at the end of the day, you, sir, are in government. The opposition, all they could do is talk. You can do. And with that, you need to realize that, yes, it's going to sometimes leave you in potentially unfair conditions. That is the price you pay to sit on the seat. So he's saying that the opposition leader is trying to bait him. I don't know if she's trying to bait him with regards to causing the case to be further damaged. I just think this is par for the course. She is going to throw accusations out at him, and how he's handling it, it's almost like if she's verbally attacking me, it's not fair, I don't know how to deal with it. This whole situation, this whole defense, yes, it's a gift of the gab, but the content of what he's saying really isn't inspiring much.
And apart from the content he's expressing, it's not inspiring. At the end of the day, this has cost taxpayers millions of dollars. In the indemnity agreement, you're agreeing to pay Vincent Nelson's fees, which, from what I understand, are still outstanding. So the thing is, as the Attorney General, I'm questioning now whether or not you were seeking avenues in order to charge individuals who are part of the administration from 2010, or whether or not this is genuine on the part of the AG, or it was a witch hunt on the part of the AG. And I don't like to use that term often, but I think, in all fairness to the Attorney General as well, Gilbert Peterson and Douglas Mendes, whom, by the way, have no obligation to do so. They do not have an obligation, and they do not have to. But I think in the best interest of this case and to the Attorney General, who has more or less thrown them under the bus, I think that we should hear more on the advice that was given to him. Because you can't say anything about Faris Sahrawi, but Faris Sahrawi can throw everybody else under the bus. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break on this program. When we return, we are hopeful that we're joined by a guest who can shed more light on this situation. We'll be right back after this.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide. But do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport. October 3rd to October 23rd, with replays on October 24th. It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It's Diwali time again, and that means delicious vegetarian cuisine. Chief has all your herbs and spices for Diwali. Curry, jeera, saffron, garam masala and more for all your tal curry. Cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, ginger and cardamom for those delectable sweets. Brown rice, dal and chana for those tasty delicacies. And of course, Chief baking powder for soft and light roti. This Diwali, remember, the chief reason is always taste.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. This morning, Sean Michael Small and myself, we are privileged to be joined by Opposition Member of Parliament and elected representative for the constituency of Shogunas West, Mr. Dinesh Rambali. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me on your program, and good morning to all of your viewers and listeners. Certainly my pleasure to join you all yet again.
Well, you're joining us this morning in your capacity as the Shadow Attorney General, and I'm hoping that you can shed more light on this, what I would refer to as a developing situation. I don't think that it ends with yesterday's events. I think there is more to come. But following the press conference by the Attorney General yesterday, I myself, and I can say without doubt, many citizens are still not quite clear of what this situation actually is and what it means for Trinidad and Tobago and for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. All we understand is that taxpayers' dollars have been spent on another legal case in which the state has found itself embroiled in controversy.
Yes, Keaton, you are absolutely right. The citizenry is very concerned about the change in, course of these legal proceedings that the public has been hearing and witnessing for the past few years. And what I want to say is that we have to take things in context. You have persons who are charged before the court, and I will not get too much into those details, certainly not yet. Mm-hmm. What has happened is that these persons having been charged, and they are high-profile persons, so of course the public has a certain amount of investment in what is the outcome of these proceedings, because one does not want to know as a member of the public that one persons who are accused accused of serious crimes, in this case, white-collar crimes, that they are somehow treated any differently. One would want to know that if it is they have in fact done something wrong, that they face the brunt of the law, the full brunt of the law. On the other hand, you have those who are concerned that, look, yes, it is one thing to say that, these persons, if they have in fact done something wrong, they should face the law. But, one wants to know that there is proper due process. One wants to know that this is not a political witch hunt, because it does not bode well for the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago. And I think all right-thinking citizens have invested their time in this particular or these particular matters for the reason that you want to know that democracy is alive in this country. And democracy is something, it is the bedrock, it is the foundation of the peaceful way that we live. It is the foundation of how we interact with each other. It is the foundation for attracting persons to come and invest with us, foreign investors. It is the foundation for prosperity in this country. So what you have is a situation where persons following this case, albeit through the media or otherwise, social media, print media, they have been following this case. And on Monday, lo and behold, what you witnessed was the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, going before the court and indicating to the court that there is going to be a discontinuance or withdrawal, whatever the terminology you wish.
All right, it seems as though we've lost connection there. Okay, Mr. Ramali, I do apologize. We lost you there for about 20 seconds. If you can just repeat the point that you were making previously.
Yes, I was just, I'm setting the context, and I hope I pick up back where maybe we lost each other. I was setting the context that members of the society are invested in this, and they have been following this case. And on Monday, what they would have heard was that this case is now being discontinued. Now, that is one thing, but it is critical to take note that when the case was discontinued, what were the statements of the DPP? What was the statement of the presiding magistrate? And the presiding magistrate made it clear, and persons who had gathered and were addressing the court, they took the position that the DPP was acting honorably. In fact, he was commended by the magistrate for the steps he had taken in the proceedings. So I want the public to know that investing their time and simply hearing on Monday through the news that, look, the case has been discontinued, one thing was made clear by the presiding magistrate was that the DPP had acted honorably. He was commended for his actions taken in the case. And there are reasons for that. So, and I know we will get into the reasons as we get along with the discussion. But that having been done on Monday, what next? Immediately upon the DPP putting certain things on the record before the magistrate, what you had was the Attorney General, the present sitting Attorney General, immediately coming out to say that, look, we are going to do all that is necessary to ensure that if, you know, there are proceeds of crime, it is going to be followed. And talking about disciplinary action. Now, I want to stick up in at this point to say that this present sitting Attorney General is the last person who should be threatening, you know, lawyers in the profession of disciplinary prosecution for disciplinary complaints, because he himself he stands and you know, perjured, right? He stands the risk of committing perjury in a Miami court. He has conceded before his members, his fellow members of the legal profession, that he misrepresented the extent of his involvement in, you know, cases and certainly before Miami court. So I don't know that that bodes well for, you know, transparency, and he certainly does not have the credibility to push things forward and to convince members of the public that he is in any position to do anything regarding following, you know, disciplinary matters and pursuing lawyers and what have you to get back proceeds of crime. He himself has issues which he still has not properly answered and accounted for. So I removed that pin that I stuck earlier. They come out, this sitting Attorney General comes out and he has comments to make concerning the actions of the DPP. The last time I checked, the DPP is an independent office. I know that the members of the public, they are very familiar with the fact that the DPP has, you know, very unique powers under the Constitution that has been allotted to himself, the office of the DPP alone. So one must be careful to not encroach on the powers, the exercise of powers by the DPP. And I raise this because when the DPP exercises certain powers, which he has done in these proceedings, that you have immediately a sitting Attorney General coming on the heels of that to say, no, I am shocked, I am stunned, I am taken by surprise, and I'm going to do everything possible to ensure that we have a revitalization of this prosecution. That is essentially what the Attorney General was saying. Now, questions have come about Keaton, and this is the problem that we have. The problem we have is that you have proceedings. Monday, we witnessed the discontinuance of those proceedings. And this is where I come back to the fact that really the leader of the opposition, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, she has indicated a long time ago her concerns over what was taking place with respect to this matter. She raised it in the parliament and outside of parliament that you had an unholy relationship or an unholy alliance between certain members, namely former Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi. You had Roger Kewal Singh, who was previously a member of the Police Service Commission, also taking on legal briefs concerning this matter as well, representing Vincent Nelson, and that the whole thing was pointing in a direction which did not bode well for the public's confidence in the administration of justice. So let us just shave off the politics for a little bit and understand that what the leader of the opposition has been saying, and this her campaign of transparency and accountability and confidence in the administration of justice didn't start on Monday when this case was discontinued. It was going on in the parliament. You will recall that there was a whole, hullabaloo or furor, a scandal concerning the dismantling of first the Police Service Commission, which eventually led to the fact that we no longer have a substantive commissioner of police. And during those discussions, these were matters which Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar was raising. So I want the public to know that you have members who have been raising this in the context of it does not bode well for the rule of law and the administration of justice. So I get back now into the facts, Keaton.
Well, Mr. Rambali, I do apologize for having to cut you because, I know that we're getting deep into this conversation. Forgive us, we do have to take a quick break, but when we return, I'd like you to continue with the point that you're making as we get into the facts of the matter. But stay tuned to Talking Point. Mr. Dinesh Rambali is with us this morning, and we will continue the conversation after this.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amar-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy, there will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
I had this accident last year, so it is more convenient for me now to move about with the car, so I can move about to the lanes properly. Here is the only place I could shop conveniently with my budget. Everything I get it here at a convenient price. I just get specials on butters and whatever, so it will be convenient for me. Their prices is very low compared to other supermarkets. It's a really nice place to shop.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital. In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rambali. Dinesh Rambali is with us this morning. Sir, I do apologize once more, but if you'd like to continue as you were getting into the facts of this developing situation.
Yes, Keaton, where I would like to pick up back is that, look, you have members of the public, and I'm saying namely the leader of the opposition. And the reason why I will point out the leader of the opposition at this point in time is because I am a little bit disheartened, and I think it is a very disingenuous of Mr. Faris Al-Rawi to have gone in a press conference yesterday and to indicate that, for the last 13 years, the leader of the opposition has been calling for his resignation. The discontinuance of this particular case on Monday is proof enough that Mrs. Persad-Bissessar was seeing the warning signs over the years that, if we had listened to her, if we were taking her advice, that we would have not witnessed a total collapse of the Police Service Commission. We would not be rudderless and headless in our police service. We would not be without a substantive commissioner of police. And now we would not be in this position where you have a discontinuance of, a very high-profile criminal proceeding, which comes after having expended a lot of the citizens' resources. The monies that are spending in legal fees in the tune of millions are not being spent by the government. It's not coming out of their pockets. It is being spent by the government on behalf of the citizens. And this is where the accountability comes. So I want to say that, I myself, as a member of the opposition, elected member for Chaguanas West, but as an attorney at law and as a citizen of this country, I have to give hats off and kudos to the leader of the opposition for continuously and vigorously raising these issues in and out of the parliament. If we had taken just one iota of what concerns were being raised by her, I don't think we would be in a position where we are today, where
Mr.
people are wondering.
On that point in itself, let me ask you, and I know that I perhaps already have an idea of what your response might be, but in this instance, we've heard from the Attorney General, we've heard from the Leader of the Opposition. This entire case, I mean, how much is it really of going after crime, criminality, corruption, white-collar crime, or one political party versus the other, and vice versa? Because, to anybody viewing in the public, they may say, listen, this is a PNM administration going after a previous UNC administration, and then you have the opposition leader going after the former Attorney General, who is a current government minister. This is just politics and politicians going after each other rather than doing the work of the people and doing the work of the state on behalf of the state.
Well, I think that, on the face of it, that may appear, it may appear to the members of the public that this is what it is, that you have two parties warring, two political parties. But if one follows, and this is what I am saying, that the leader of the opposition, one must be able to shave off some of the politics and take the personalities aside and look at the issues. What were the issues being raised by the leader of the opposition? One, the issues that were being raised was whether or not the government was acting in a manner above board. Were they acting, and are they continuing to act in a manner which is subversive to the administration of justice? Now, let us just leave that there and let's get into the facts then to prove the point. You have a DPP who I've already said is constitutionally charged with exercising power when it comes to criminal proceedings. Number one, what business does a government have, or a member of the government, an Attorney General, have in proceeding with exercising whatever authority, misplaced authority or otherwise, they believe they have, to engage in a person? This is not any ordinary person. This is a person who is, according to the government and according to the state, also guilty of having corruptly engaged in some practices, having committed a crime. What authority does Faris Al-Rawi have to engage in seeking and providing an indemnity to this person? Shouldn't that be in the realm of the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution? When it comes to investigation, when it comes to charging, when it comes to laying the charges, when it comes to seeking advice on plea bargaining and engaging in plea bargaining, you use the arm of state, which is the police. You use the investigators. They would do the investigation. They would lay the charges. And they themselves would seek, in cases where they think they need advice, they can seek advice from the DPP as to whether to proceed to lay charges and what kind of charges to be laid. And the DPP will give that advice. If charges are laid, as in this particular case, there were no instances or reasons or circumstances which warranted an Attorney General stepping outside of the remit that is given to him under the Constitution to go engaging in giving an indemnity. And listen to what this indemnity is. This indemnity is not simply a plea bargain which would fall within the realm of the DPP's office. This is an indemnity which goes so far as to allow a person who is guilty of having committed a crime, who pleads guilty of having committed a crime, of being not only protected, but whatever fine is now going to be levied against him by the state itself is in a position of having to indemnify this witness. In other words, what I mean is if Mr. Nelson has to pay a fine and or be imprisoned, whatever it may be. The point about it is the state is going to pay those monies, that fine. So what kind of message, how does the criminal justice system work in a situation where you have the state bargaining with somebody, so this person is liable to the state, but the state is already going to indemnify this person? That is why you have a DPP who will engage in the plea bargaining process to determine what is proper, what is appropriate, and their office is charged independently with engaging in these things.
Well,
you have a situation, sorry, I just want to make this point.
Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to make this point for the members of the public. This is beyond politics. You have a situation where, how does this matter engage the Attorney General to start with? Has anybody asked the question of the Attorney General? And I'm saying this rhetorically. They have. He just has not provided the answer. But for members of the public, I want them to approach this matter from the point of view, how does the Attorney General find himself engaged in this matter? How does this indemnity arise? He is now trying to palm off blame for, engaging in drafting of and executing an indemnity agreement on attorneys who he sought advice. So is it that Mr. Gilbert Peterson, Senior Counsel, and Mr. Douglas Mendes, Senior Counsel, took it upon themselves to approach the Attorney General and say, Attorney General, listen, this is what is going on? How did the Attorney General, then Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi, find himself to start with, according to him, seeking the advice of Douglas Mendes and Gilbert Peterson? Why didn't the Attorney General leave the matter up to the DPP? And the whole trail of documentation that we are seeing in the public domain thus far, I am not privy to any information other than what I have been reading in the papers between Monday and today. And when you look at the newspaper report, what you are seeing is that the Attorney General went ahead and executed this indemnity agreement with Vince Nelson, somebody who has pleaded guilty to corruption charges. They indemnify Vincent Nelson, and then after that, it would appear that they then sought to engage the DPP when the lawyers for Vince Nelson was now asking to be remunerated. And that is what you will see. Up to October 2021, it is reported in the papers, in the print media, that the DPP was indicating that he had no knowledge of what this indemnity agreement was about. And prior to that, the DPP noted on 2 occasions that, look, you all are pointing out certain things to me, but I am not the progenitor of this whole thing.
Well, Mr. Ramali,
so I cannot get involved in it.
I just want to ask your opinion. The whole situation here, the defense that the former Attorney General gave, you've already reiterated it. It's that he was under advisement. He took advice. He was advised by 2 senior counsels. He is basically, he mentioned that Douglas Mendes in the press conference was the one to more or less negotiate the indemnity agreements, to paraphrase, if I am understanding Faris Al-Rawi correctly. However, the implication in some of his statements also is that this is either the best way forward or perhaps the only way forward to go after the corruption case, because he's saying, well, we saw this situation and we had to prosecute it. What do you expect us to do? But I have to ask, given the results, we have a witness that pleaded guilty. Not only is the witness now refusing to give evidence, but the guilty verdict to some extent could also be used against him by the defense to discredit his statements. And we've reached the point now where the agreement, he has more or less gotten some from his end. He hasn't given us the evidence, at least enough for the DPP to be confident to continue the case or to move forward the case. So I have to ask, just your opinion here. Was this necessary? Is this an all a red flag? Because it seems as though on both sides, the former Attorney General, whether he directly or indirectly had a hand in it, has somewhat put this case in a corner that makes it very difficult to continue.
You are absolutely right. I could not have dissected it better than what you said in those last few sentences. You're absolutely right. The actions of the previous Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi and members of the government now has put this whole situation of where you have a witness, Vincent Nelson, who pleads guilty to a corruption charge, being able to now sue the state. He is in fact suing the state for monies because he's saying there's a breach of indemnity. And he is going to now, in addition to this indemnity agreement being, existing, he is now in a position of levying for monies against the state. So how is the state being protected? But it brings me back to the point, and the simple point is, the actions of the former Attorney General is subversive to the course of justice. The administration of justice has now been rendered, in a state of, absolute lack of confidence. And this is what the public has to be aware of. Do you know in all the countries of the world, 139 or what have you, who subscribe to UN Convention and they subscribe to all of the international protocols which relate to the rule of law. When you're talking about the adherence to the rule of law, and even Trinidad and Tobago is marked, is measured on this scale. And I think, in the last couple of years, not that I think, I know for a fact, as of 2021, Trinidad and Tobago fell in its ranking in terms of adherence to the rule of law. And what does that mean? When you're measuring rule of law in any country, you are talking about constraint of exercise of government powers. You're talking about absence of corruption. You're talking about fulfillment of fundamental rights, citizens' fundamental rights, all of these things, processes. And Trinidad and Tobago has already fallen in its rank as a state that adheres to the rule of law. And it is for these same reasons that we are now seeing it has materialized and crystallized in a way that we are seeing it in black and white in front of our very eyes now. It is for these same reasons that we are falling in the ranking.
Mr. Rambali,
yes.
Yes, sir. Sorry to cut you. We don't have much time left, but I wanted your opinion on this indemnity agreement. The Attorney General said he acted with the powers that he held at the time. Well, the former Attorney General, Faris Haro, he acted with the powers he held at the time, and he did not have to notify Cabinet or Parliament of such. Now, the Prime Minister has not spoken as yet, but in your opinion, I mean, as a Member of Parliament, also as an attorney at law, would it have been right, or is the Attorney General correct in stating that he did not have to, there was no obligation to inform Parliament or Cabinet? Should he have indeed informed Cabinet or Parliament?
Number one, I don't believe, it is very difficult for me to believe, based on the documentation that we are seeing and what we are seeing, unearthed in the press, to believe that Faris Al-Rawi acted on his own and only with advice of Senior Counsel Gilbert Peterson and Douglas Mendes. It is very difficult for a fair-minded and reasonable-minded person with some basic level of intelligence to believe that Faris acted on his own. That is number one. Number two, that being said, he has a duty, and other members, the Prime Minister has to come out and indicate, as called upon by Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar, whether or not they knew of this indemnity agreement. It is highly unlikely that they would have been left in the dark. It must have been that certain members of the government knew about it, and that is where they have to come out. Did the Prime Minister know about the indemnity agreement, and if so, did he approve of it?
Well,
was Minister Young involved in it? Because that is being said. I saw it even up to today in the Express newspaper. And the point I want to go on to is this. He does have a duty to come to the Parliament, especially where these said issues were raised. So number one, he ought not to have involved himself because he does not have that authority. So he exceeded his authority as Attorney General and involved himself in matters which he ought not to have done, which now leads to the clear inference that the government is on a political witch hunt. They are subverting the course of justice. They are perverting the course of justice. And having done so, where are we today? We have expended taxpayers' dollars. We are none the wiser as to whether or not this prosecution is something that will be for the benefit of the citizens, or it is going to be something that it is only going to burden the taxpayers now with monies. And a person who is now facing different charges in potentially different countries is now going to be indemnified by taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. That is where we are today.
Mr. Rambali,
I hope I have answered your question.
My final question to you, I now have to ask with regards to Mr. Nelson. He is refusing to give evidence to the point where the DPP has decided to discontinue the case. Now, notwithstanding the current AG's determination to continue the case, I do have to ask, if Mr. Nelson does not live up to his end, which I believe is to give the evidence for the case to be prosecuted, the former AG says that he did give notarized statements. I don't know if that's enough per the agreement, but let's just say he doesn't live up to the agreement. Can the indemnity agreement more or less be nullified? And can Mr. Nelson now, his situation be reversed and he have to face consequences? Because he did plead guilty, it's just that he hasn't faced any consequences for anything because of the agreement to give evidence against two other accused persons.
Well, remember there's an existing proceeding now in the court. We don't have much knowledge of it because it has been sealed. Sealed for the members of the public means that you can file a matter in court and you can ask that it be sealed. So therefore it is only the immediate parties to the proceedings and the judge who is dealing with it that they have sight of the proceedings. He has filed an action and he has, basically it has been sealed in the court. Now I saw a newspaper report where the attorney acting for Vincent Nelson in that matter is asking for those documents to be unsealed. And I am of the view that having regard to what has transpired now in the last few days, it ought to be unsealed so that we can see exactly what is the case being brought by Vincent Nelson against the government, against the state of Trinidad and Tobago arising out of the indemnity. If we see that, we will be in a better position to gauge the issues, to know whether or not there is some prospect of success in his claim. And if there's prospect of success in his claim, that could only mean that Faris Al-Rawi and others, acting for the government have somehow acted in a manner which, the agreement is somehow weak. The agreement is somehow beyond the remit of his power. We don't know the basis of that claim, except that for now, according to the public domain, he is saying that the government has breached the agreement. To answer your question in short, I am not, and I don't think any member of the public is in a position without having all of the information, having total transparency. We are not in a position to answer the question, where do we go from here in terms of what will be the outcome with Vincent Nelson? What will be the outcome of any criminal proceedings which have now been discontinued, meaning whether or not the DPP can relay and all of these things. What I do know is that the immediate persons who were before the courts, they have rights. Vincent Nelson has rights, but the taxpayers, you and me, the rest of us, members of the society and the country, our rights are protected when there is transparency, when there is accountability, and when there isn't any subversion of the course of justice, the administration of justice. That is how our rights are protected, and that is where we are not getting the information, and so we don't know whether we are in a good position in terms of our democracy today.
Mr. Rambali, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program once more, for the extended time that you were with us this morning. We appreciate your presence, and we'll continue to keep a close eye on this developing story. But thank you very much. I'll be very honest with you, I think you simplified it a bit more so that there's a better understanding. But there are many sides to this story, and this was just one side that we heard from this morning. But thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to all of the viewers and listeners. Thank you.
All the very best, Mr. Dinesh Rambali. He is the Shadow Attorney General and an opposition member of Parliament. As I said, many sides to this story and just one side this morning. So, folks, we break for WSN's News on the Hour, and when we return, we open up the phone lines this morning.
Your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 75 receive certificates of comfort. Man killed in alleged shootout with police. Opposition senator describes budget as wicked and callous. And internationally, US and Mexico make deal to ease Venezuela migration. Now for the details. 75 lucky families on Wednesday received certificates of comfort documents. Housing and Planning Minister Camille Robinson-Regis delivered the keynote address at the ceremony.
Today, all the agencies responsible for granting permission for land and housing development are linked digitally, thereby reducing the inordinately long waiting time for permissions to be granted. Additionally, because these records and applications are now online, applicants can track the progress of their applications.
One man is dead following a shootout with police. Reports say 42-year-old Larry Vanas of Kaigwal village, Shangri Chiquito, was shot dead by police in Silibia early Wednesday morning. Officers received a tip-off of a vehicle transporting illegal drugs and guns. When officers arrived, they observed a group of men exiting a fishing vessel docked on shore. On seeing the officers, the men allegedly fired. The officer returned fire, hitting Vanas. He was rushed to the Sangre Grande Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Opposition Senator Wade Mark says the 2022-2023 budget is wicked and callous. He was making his contribution during the budget debate in the Senate on Wednesday.
Budget 2023 is a wicked budget. It is brutal and callous in its assault on the poor, the vulnerable, and the marginalized citizens in our country. It is a disaster for the majority of the people. And Madam President, the wicked will pay a price for this disaster on the voiceless and defenseless people.
And internationally, the US and Mexico have agreed to a plan that allows some Venezuelan migrants to enter the US, but those who arrive illegally will be sent back to Mexico. It is hoped the deal will ease pressure on the US-Mexico border, where a steady flow of Venezuelans continue to arrive as they flee the crisis-hit nation. Starting immediately, flights will be arranged for 24,000 migrants to arrive in the United States. Some 6 million people have left Venezuela in the past 5 years. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying with us. I am, reading the story and trying my very best to follow it, because it is a lot, if I may say so, to hear from the opposition leader. The Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress has been very active in messaging.
Well, he's always very active.
And he sent a lot of documents to follow, and the stories from the Attorney General, the opposition leader, like I said. What is interesting is that the former Attorney General has indicated that, and I'd like to quote from his press conference yesterday, "I took the advice of eminent senior counsel in relation to the obligations of the Office of the Attorney General and follow that advice. The simple fact is somebody said they stole money from the government and they pointed fingers to 2 other people who stole money as well. Perhaps I should return the question and ask, what did you expect the state to do in the face of this information?" Now, the thing is that they're prosecuting, or the former Attorney General was seeking to prosecute Anram Logan and Geraldine. Now, if there was evidence to suggest that, okay, the Director of Public Prosecutions should have gone ahead with the case. But you cannot ask that question. You cannot make that argument and make that statement while at the same time having an agreement with Vincent Nelson. Essentially, Vincent Nelson has admitted to a crime and stealing money from the government and the state of Trinidad and Tobago, and he's getting away with it, whilst we're going after Jar Ramdeen and Ramlogan, which, for me, as a citizen, I disagree with.
There is an implication from this whole situation that the DPP might not have gone ahead with the prosecution without the AG intervening. Which, think about it. Why wouldn't the DPP have gone through? That's the implication. Because what did you expect the government to do? Not act? Well, if the DPP is supposed to act, not the government, right? According to Mr. Rambali, and it does make sense that you will not want the government to be front row center, to be the center stage of acting in a political trial, in a trial against their political opponents. You don't want that to happen because it could undermine, the perception could undermine the entire case.
Well, let's open up the phone lines now, where we give you, the viewer, the opportunity to weigh in on the conversation and express your opinions with us this morning. We welcome that. The phone lines are on, the numbers are on your screen, and the phone lines are open. And we do have a caller on the line with us from Pity Valley. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean and Keaton.
Good morning.
I just like 3 points on this case. Very confusion. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a layman. Your guest there just now help a little, but I still confused. One, Mr. Oh shucks, I lost my thought. Yes. The guy who taking the case
Nelson
against Mr. Ramdeen and Ramlogan.
Right.
Mr. Nelson, sorry.
There's a DPP.
Mr. Nelson didn't plead guilty on the case against the corruption case against Mr. Ramdeen and Mr. Ramlogan, and he gave several testimony over 10 times in statements.
Yes.
And two, did our who does prosecute our case here?
The DPP.
The DPP, sorry. The DPP didn't give the okay at the time with the evidence to charge the case. And three, I find it very strange Mr. Arari will go and say Mr. Peterson and Mr. Mendez give him advice. These is two permanent men. If it's either he lie or these men could come out and defend themselves and say it is not true. So that part with what he's saying, Mr. Peterson and Mendez giving advice, I don't think these two men will just take that just like that with a reputation without clearing it up.
Yes.
So that is my 3 points this morning, guys.
Thank you very much.
I guess we'll respond off here. One of the first things I want to say is that we've already seen a situation where the former AG, he took credit for a piece of legislation, and then when it kind of backfired and didn't go the way he expected, he said, well, no, I didn't actually write it. Now, he could have taken advice. Actually, him getting advice is not really the issue. The issue is him actually carrying out the function, right? He got advice, but was he even supposed to carry out the function of the indemnity deal? Because senior counsel can't just go independently of himself and make that deal on behalf of the state. Somebody has to have the senior counsel act as an agent of the state. He's not the Attorney General. No, he's not the DPP.
That is if the Office of the Attorney General hires the senior counsel. But the 2 points, the last point that you made and the first point, I will respond to. I'd like to, because they're very good points. And we have a caller line with us, though, from Digger Martin. All right, we lost that caller. We do apologize for keep you waiting. We heard that the caller is on the line, and we'll try our very best to get directly to the cause. To the very first caller, and the first point that you made, Vincent Nelson, according to Faris Arawi, the former Attorney General, said, admitted guilt to an act against the state, essentially stealing money against the state. Now, we can't go into much more details because it's a legal matter, but I will respond to your third point after this call from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I just want to make a comment as pertaining to this situation. Well, I think Mr. Albari, he did get opinions, and that is exactly what they are, opinions. But the buck lies with him. And the Prime Minister last night in his meeting stated that that decision belongs to the state's attorneys. which by extension is Paris Al-Bari as the head at that time.
Yes.
So he cleared himself on that. And also, the whole fact remains about this thing is that accountability and dealing with a person like Nelson, I don't know you can make deal with the devil. That's a whole big problem here by itself to start with. And I think that the less Mr. Al-Rawi say about this thing is better for him.
Perhaps.
And I think that will be better for him and the whole government as well.
Well, that may be
But
the advice
it's
they're
a telling situation for him, because I can't see having a way out of this at all. Because the Prime Minister last night said a lot of things there. If you listen to any meeting, you will see that what is going on here with that. And it's only excuses and real nonsensical statements they're making. So I suggest you all listen to that meeting last night and you'll hear a lot of things come out of it.
Well, thank you very much,
for taking
sir.
my call as usual, and have a good day.
You too, have a great day. And well, the Prime Minister, I think he was placed in a position where he had no choice but to distance himself. We have a caller on the line with us from Shogunas. Good morning, caller.
Morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
There's a lot of talk about advice. Advice in the public service is not that simple. The Attorney General advice is supposed to come from his staff, headed by the Solicitor General. Right? Now, there are cases where they would have to go outside for advice. Then a request will be made in writing. And the request will say clearly what you want the advice on. Because you could get the advice you want by forming your request in a certain way. So that all those advice we're hearing about, the important thing is to get copies of the advice and see what they wanted advice on. Secondly, we hear their affidavits. Now, these affidavits from Mr. Nelson, why can't they be used now in the court? I am hearing this statement from the one person I trust in this matter, saying it would not be prudent or something. I can understand that. That needs explanation. If he's signing an affidavit saying he's going to do this. Secondly, and that next point, is he said they reneged on the agreement. We have to see that full agreement clearly. Because in one stated, the reports I have read, some of them say you have this, that in the agreement. But then they go on to say he wanted indemnity. And it is not clear to me whether that is in the agreement. And all those things have to be cleared up, gentlemen. Unless you have any questions this morning.
No, but you brought up a good point that I also was thinking of just before you called that I will comment on with regards to the advice.
But thank you very much.
It was a very, very good point.
For your contribution. And I still have to respond to the caller from Petty Valley. But we do have a caller on the line with us actually from Canupia. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Keaton.
Good morning.
Yeah. You know, this whole situation, or we can put it as a debacle, this whole debacle regarding this situation that the former Attorney General has found himself in could have been avoided. You know, the first thing here, when you look at the press conference yesterday, the former AG saying that, the current AG saying, or not the AG, the DPP saying that they could restart the matter. First of all, the witness have lost credibility. How are people going to really view this person if you're going to restart this matter? This person being Benson Nelson here now. You have the option where people are going to say, well, it's a clear instance where he has been given money, he has been paid by the state, and how can we trust his information that he's putting forward in terms of prosecuting those two individuals? And I think this is where the Attorney General went wrong in this instance. I think the indemnity should have fallen squarely on the lap of the DPP and not in the office of the Attorney General.
Yes.
Now, while the AG signal that there's street bargain and a host of other things, and he have the remit to go after civil matters, I don't think he should have created this indemnity via the office. This should have been done with the DPP. And now he's trying to take himself out of the entire matter, and I think it is rather unfortunate.
Yeah.
You know, what is interesting, as soon as those documents unsealed, because I suspect it would, I mean, there are a number of persons who are waiting to see in terms of what exactly Vincent Nelson claims against the state is, we will have a clearer picture in terms of moving forward. I don't necessarily see this matter being, the charges being reinstated. I think it will be frivolous and quite obscene, really, to see these matters after the witness himself have lost credibility or sort of what holding the state ransom in terms of providing evidence.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see that in terms of moving forward. So the difficult will drag along, I suspect, and we will see as we go along. But in terms of the ramifications,
yes,
this is Trinidad and Tobago, so we should drink coffee. No one is going to resign. We're going to forget about it by 9 days.
Yeah. Koala, thank you very much for your contribution this morning.
Thank you, Koala.
I just want to go back very quickly to the final point that the caller from Pitty Valley made, and with regards to the advice that Douglas Mendez and Gilbert Peterson would have given to the former Attorney General. I mean, once more, the Attorney General was in the middle of something, and he's now trying to distance himself by blaming others. And I think you're right. I don't think, you know, Douglas Mendez is a respectable attorney at law. Some people might disagree, but he's very senior counsel, to say the least, and Gilbert Peterson as well, who also worked under the office of the DPP. Need I just say, they have no obligation to release the advice, but they are allowed to defend themselves. And I think in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago, they should come out and they should clarify the situation. Maybe they wouldn't, but I'm suggesting that they do. Again, no obligation to release the advice.
Because they don't want to risk future contracts.
I don't think that is the case, because the Attorney General has thrown them directly under the bus. But we do have a call on the line with us.
I don't think it works, though. I'll tell you why.
We do have a call on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, guys. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning.
I'm still on yesterday. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Leasing was right. He managed to provoke 10 callers, a whole PNM spectrum, from Rowley, Manning, Eric Williams, to endorsing Karen. He got all the factions. He even got in Pan, Powder, and Calypso, went back to World War II, crime being under control, of course, by Eric Williams, the great. I don't know, was that when it was alleged that Burroughs used to shoot people in their backs? But that caller could tell you 152 times that crime is not a problem when we're sixth in the world just behind Afghanistan. I think he should pay attention to the experts like Renee Cummings, criminologist, criminal psychologist, AI ethicist, even Professor Dave Saran. This is the 21st century. There's a multidisciplinary approach to crime now. Causes and effects are studied by professionals. Causes are psychological, sociological, economic. So it's no longer policemen at every corner to maintain law and order. You cannot simplify in one sentence of law, order, and administrative reports. Life doesn't work that way. Keaton, do I have time for another point or no? You can tell me.
No, very quickly though, very quickly.
Okay, your Claxton Bay caller, I don't know, he seems to be fixated on race or on you. He said something that confused me again. The other thing that mashed us up was religion. This one this, that one that, another. It mashed up the country. He said, I cannot belong to a religion that's telling me to hate you, Keaton. I do not understand. Was that supposed to be a comma after you and then Keaton? Or is it hating you specifically as a person? Or someone telling someone to hate other ethnicities? I don't know. If this is annoying and you don't want to respond,
no,
that's cool.
I will
Thanks.
respond
Bye-bye.
to you. I will respond to you after this caller from Philly City. Good morning, caller. All right, I think we've...
Is that the Felicity call?
Did we miss the call, or is the caller with us?
Okay.
All right, the call dropped. Caller from Felicity, there is some time left. You can call it. But when the caller from yesterday from Claxton called in and said, you know, I cannot belong to religion that tells me to hate somebody like Hugh Keaton. Initially, I was a bit confused, but after listening to it, I was of the opinion, and I believe, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, that he was under the assumption that because my surname is Shah and I have a beard, he probably thought I was a Muslim, and maybe that is what he was pointing to, trying to tell how there is hate from religious groups to other religious groups. I assume that is what the case. So I could be wrong. If he's willing to clarify, we could appreciate that. But I took no offense to this. I didn't really take much into it because he didn't mean any offense. I never got that. And we do have a caller on the line with us, though, interestingly enough, from Claxon Bay. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Keaton.
Good morning.
Morning to you, listen, audience. My take on these politicians, it could be UNC, it could be PNM. These people are only there to fill their pocket. All the corruption, everything that goes on. The best thing to do with them, fellas, and them, like in them Islam, we say put them in the school and shoot all of them down. Put them in finance.
Oh gosh,
most of the
Mr. Fisher,
right.
we can't say that.
Sorry, sir.
Sorry, sir. We can't say that. We can't say that. That might be inciting people to do things that, to be quite frank, political speech is incendiary enough as it is. And I understand the sentiment, but we really have to be responsible and cannot say things like that publicly.
Mr. Fisher,
I understand your frustration.
I was just about to say, whilst I understand your frustration, and the citizens of Toronto are frustrated, you are a regular caller to the program, and you have made very good points and very good contributions. However, I am so sorry, sir. We do not accept that. We do not condone it. We actually condemn that, because as much as you have frustrations, stating things like that is unacceptable, and I am sorry, and I hope that you would rethink that your comments. Nothing, I'm not trying to buff you in any way, but think about it for a moment. We have a caller on the line with us from Felicity. Good morning, caller.
Caller, good morning, you're here.
Hi, good morning. My apologies. I did hang up. I called back. You have to look at your money on your mobile nowadays.
Right.
We understand, caller.
The lady took a little while. So anyhow, I wish to conclude with that caller from Shagonas, who spoke about advice.
Yes.
Having worked in the litigation department of the Ministry of the AG for over 38 years, he is quite correct in the manner in which advice is supposed to be sought. First, the AG goes to the Solicitor General. The Solicitor General will now recommend somebody else, like a senior outside counsel, if it's necessary, and it's up to the AG to say, I agree or I don't agree. Secondly, I want to wish my former colleague, Mrs. Karen Nunes Teixeira, the bright lady of WESN Talking Point, all the best in the pursuit of the political leadership of the People's National Movement. Karen, my dear, a very good morning to you. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you very much, sir. We do apologize for having kept you waiting, but thank you for calling back and clarifying that. You see, everything that you've said there is very much ideal.
Yes.
It's whether or not it actually happens and whether or not it actually did happen. Folks, we have to take a quick break here on the program on routine while we'll conclude things for this morning's proceedings.
Diwali is in the air again, and Royal Castle reminds you to try its yummy veggie burger. The Royal Castle veggie burger is great on its own or in a combo with a side and a 16-ounce drink. And it's healthy too. A nutritious patty made with oats, lentils, chana, potatoes, and carrot inside a soft bun with tomatoes and lettuce. So for this season, try the Castle's tasty and healthy veggie burger. Shubh Diwali from Royal Castle.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Welcome back to the program. Just before we conclude things, actually quite a bit of phone call this morning. But Sean Michael, small, I know you didn't get much time, and if you're saying anything like
it's just that thing about advice, I very much agree with. And first of all, so it's implied that the AG was the one that made the decision on the MTA agreement. He says that it was Senior Counsel Douglas Mendez that did the negotiations. And both of those things could be true. His defense, I actually think, throwing the Senior Counsel in the bus doesn't work, because the Senior Counsel is not an office holder. He needs to be hired by somebody to give him authority on behalf of the state to carry out whatever functions he has to carry out. I don't believe it was the office of the DPP, so it's most likely the office of the Attorney General. And that point about the advice, the implication in all of this is that they didn't just get advice, oh, this is the best way forward. The implication was this is the best way forward to get the result we wanted. I have been reminded that the PNM, to some extent, campaigned on going after corruption. So we have information. Maybe it's not evidence yet. Maybe it's just intelligence. Who knows? We want to get evidence. We get advice to give us the result we want. We want to prosecute this case. The DPP does not necessarily seem to be all in agreement in it, right? So the implication is they're going after the result that they want, and now it has fallen apart on them. And like I said, on both ends, because even the avenue that they took to do it potentially discredits the witness upon which the entire case is reliant upon.
Anyway, it is of my opinion that, advice was taken out of convenience. I mean, you just essentially pointed to that, but you're taking advice of two lawyers who were hired by the Office of the Attorney General, whilst also allegedly refuting the advice of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And furthermore, in the argument, the Attorney General himself made the argument yesterday is that what should the state do if we have information that suggests criminal wrongdoing was committed against the state? Should the state just stand by? You're making that argument going after Gerald Ramdeen and Anaram Logan, and if there is wrongdoing, I understand. But you can't say that and then let Vincent Nelson essentially walk away scot-free and recover all his lawyer's fees.
But not just that, Keaton. And first of all, I just want to reiterate what you said. He chose what advice he wanted to accept, right? But then the other thing is they're political opponents. You have an independent office. Leave it to the independent office so that there is no perception of bias or a conflict of interest to undermine your case. Why not do it that way? Anybody who is serious about justice and the prosecution of crime would have done it that way. If you're looking to get a leg up on the competition, you're going to do whatever you have to do to try and see it through. But this is now, I think, perhaps just one more example of the former Attorney General trying to get a result, and his methods at the end of the day fall apart in a rather spectacular fashion.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are now out of time, but thank you very much to all our callers for their contribution. Thank you very much once more to Mr. Dinesh Rambali, the Shadow Attorney General Opposition Member of Parliament, for joining us in the program this morning. And thank you to my co-host and colleague. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Point on WESN, the Content Capital. Have a great Thursday. Look out for more local programming ahead. And remember, today is a good day to have a good day. Enjoy the sunshine. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Diwali Passport, brought to you by Chatak Food Products and The Little Store Limited.
When it comes to Pera and Laddu, I just use Chatak's Laddu and Pera Mithai Mix. It's a combination of traditional ingredients in one pack. I don't spend all that time preparing different ingredients like Ma. 3/4 of the work is done. So now I can make fresh, delicious Pera and Laddu in about 15 minutes with the convenience of Chatak's Laddu and Pera Mithai. Now Ma's Kitchen is a Chatak kitchen.
The Festival of Lights glows once again in many nations. Let's take a trip and find the interesting variations. Some are quiet and simple, and others filled with family and friends. Join us now for Diwali Passport on WESN. Today, we take a short flight, roughly an hour, and visit the only English-speaking country in South